Hi, welcome to EPG Pathshala. My name is Shalila Raj. I am affiliated to School of Social Work, DISS. Today we are talking about mental health concern across lifespan, youth and adult, which is a part of the course Mental Health. The structure of the module is to introduce the topic, objectives, understanding the lifespan of youth and adults, mental health concern across youth and adult, what are the determinants and influence of mental health in youth and adults, what are the mental health issues faced by youth and adults, how the mental health promotion and prevention of mental disorder in youth and adult drafted or enacted, concept of risk and protective factors of mental health in youth and adults. Finally, there is a list of suggested readings. The objective of the study is to discuss and understand the concept and age group of youth and understand the period of adulthood, not only just youth but adulthood. List out the determinants that influence the mental health of youth and adults. Discuss various mental health issues faced during the period of youth and adult. Describe various prevention and promotion aspects of mental health in youth and adults. Okay, understanding the youth and adult age period. So what is or who is a youth? Everybody has this tendency to associate youth to an age group 18 to 24, but that is the age group which is called as youth or the emerging adulthood. How would we differentiate youth and adulthood? From the adolescent, we march into, once we turn 18, we are legally mature as well as also considered as emotionally mature compared to an adolescent. So youth is an independent person, independent in the sense has the ability to think independently, to explore different life directions, to take the capacity to take decisions. So a person who has acquired maturity over a period of time from the adolescence to adulthood. And here it is also interesting that we have to keep the socio-cultural components in mind when you say a youth will take the responsibility of the family, because in certain communities the responsibility come earlier and in certain communities it may not be expected until you are of 25 years or when you are as a proper adult. So this confusion has to be cleared in the context of the social cultural component. And there is a lot of stress when you talk about 18 to 25 years of youth. There is a lot of stress in attaining education and an employment. So you are at a stage where you are productive and you are expected to convert that productivity into employment. What is adulthood then? You have already talked about youth. Then it's an 18 to 24. The person is an adult. We consider them as an adult. Then what is the difference between youth and adulthood? In youth, in that age group, we can see a transition from being an individual who was not not a child, not an adult, to a person who is an adult who start learning or attaining certain achievements in life. So for example, education. At the age of 18, we take decisions about our career, we start planning about our career, life ahead. So this is a stage we can say we are planning for future. And what is adulthood? We already planned and now whatever we planned, we are implementing it. So there are two types. One is young to middle adulthood, which is between 25 to 45, or we can say from 25 to 45 is a young adult or a middle adulthood going to middle adulthood. So what is a middle adulthood? Middle adulthood is 46 to 65. So we can understand that adulthood is a longer period in your lifespan, and which is divided into two: young adulthood and middle adulthood, and then later comes the elderly or the senior citizens. So we are dealing only with the adulthood, and what happens with adulthood is the changing roles and expectations from the youth. As a youth, you are allowed to be free, you are allowed to take decisions freely, you don't have any responsibilities, generally there is no expectation from a youth to take up responsibilities. But once you are an adult, your roles changed, your expectations change because your life changes. You have achieved a job, you started a family of your own, you are getting promotions in your job. So the expectations and roles changes. With that, the pressure on life changes. And it's here we have to be concerned about the mental health concern. In a youth, mental health concern basically relates to their decision making about life. You have to plan for life, you have to take a decision for life. But when it comes to an adult, it is not just decision making, but dealing with everyday life stresses, everyday life demands is what triggers mental health issues. Let us look at some statistics in mental health concern across youth and adults. According to WHO report 2005, across the world there are 450 million people suffering from mental disorders, and most of them, 1 in 4, will develop one or more mental or behavioral disorder during their lifetime. That is a statistic which shows that everybody is prone to get, or there's a chance to get a mental illness, but not necessarily. And mental and behavioral disorder are present at any point in about 10% of the population worldwide. So mental illness, it is there, some gets it, some doesn't get it. But this adult period or youth to adult, that adulthood is important because this is the most productive age, and most of the time mental illness occurs in this productive age. Let us look at the National Mental Health Survey of 2016 report. Says that 14% of Indian adult population are estimated to be suffering from diagnosable mental illness. Diagnosable in the sense clinically diagnosed. There are certain criteria. According to that, it can be diagnosed and treated. It is approximately 150 million population, and there is 1% of population has suicidal risk. They may attempt, or they may have a tendency to attempt suicide. Nearly 10% of adult population is affected by substance abuse. As we all know, substance abuse has become a crucial factor, especially in adulthood. Not only just the substance abuse, when we talk about substance abuse, it's not just alcohol. It can be tobacco to moderate to severe use, and other drugs, which is about 22.4% population above 18 years old. That is where we are concerned about substance abuse in youth and adult. However, in India, 1 in 20 people suffer from depression. It's not only just substance abuse or other mental illness. There is a sort of depression which generally go undiagnosed or unnoticed, which is a big mental health concern. If you look at the recent Mental Health Day we celebrated, it was devoted to preventing depression or treating depression, or trying to bring people who are suffering or who have suffered from depression into the mainstream and to make a support system for them. So depression among adult population is a big concern, especially youth. This again has to be considered under the social cultural components, where the term depression, the term mental illness itself differs in a context which doesn't have a conflict or armed conflict, ethnic conflict. Then we also have inflation, deflation, unemployment. So all these components has to be kept in mind when you try to diagnose or when you try to attempt to work with people living with mental illness. Why mental health problems are an issue in adult or youth? Because it's a productive age group, and it is mostly affected this productive age group. Though both gender are affected, let us say males or females, who gets most? Unfortunately or fortunately, overall all prevalence of mental morbidity was higher in males than females. This we can assume that it's also because of the responsibility, or because of the expectation from a male to take up the burden of the family, or take up the burden of child. All this can be higher, a little bit higher in males than in females. This is one aspect, but there may be other aspects as well. 3 out of 4 persons with severe mental disorder experience functional disability. Functional disability in the sense, person is not able to work, person is not able to sustain relationship, and is unable to involve in social life activities. So this kind of disorder has a huge impact on the youth who is at a productive age, who is expected to be productive and contribute to the family, and it's a huge economic burden. One thing we have to keep about economic burden, when why mental disorder is a huge economic burden, is it's a productive age, supposed to be employed. If it's a functional disability, your work is affected, you are not able to go for work, there is no income, If there is no strong financial support system from the family, the treatment and psychosocial rehabilitation for mental illness is going to be costly and expensive. What are the determinants of mental health in youth and adults? When we talk about determinants, it can be categorized into three. One is individual, that is biological or physical determinants. The term itself is clear, physical or biological. Anybody or any person who has a physical disability has a tendency to have a lower mental health because of the factors associated with that physical disability. But it may not be true. There are people who with physical disability lead a better quality of life. But generally, it is assumed that physical disability or a differently able body is a negative aspect for mental health. Same way, there's a presence of chronic illness, cancer, diabetes. This kind of physical illness, which is of chronic in nature, chronic in the sense you are living with it for a long period, can have a negative impact on your mental health. Socio-economic determinants. Lack of economic resources. First is there is no economic resources, or you have poor economic resources. That is, whatever income is you are getting is not sufficient. Then there is loss of income. You had an income, then you lost. That means unemployment. When you are in a profession and you have higher expectation from your profession, but you are not able to realize that kind of an expectations, that can contribute to mental ill health. Poor housing. There are a lot of people who doesn't have adequate sanitation facilities. Homelessness can be another cause. So these socio-economic determinants is a factor contributing to mental ill health. It can be positive also. Whatever we are suggesting, whatever we are discussing, that there is a lack of economic resources, can be better economic resources. So whatever contribute to negative mental health, and the availability of those can promote positive mental health. Then the third one is socio-cultural and environmental determinants. When we say environment, we have to consider the physical environment. Normally in social work, we talk about ecological perspective, not the physical structure or the physical environment per se. The cultural beliefs and practices of people who are living with mental illness and the society surrounded them. Access to resources. We have a hospital, they have psychosocial rehabilitation, or we have an NGO who provides psychosocial rehabilitation services, but are we able to access it? Accessibility can be based on the physical structure, where there is transportation facilities are not available, but also the stigma. If you go and approach and take some help, people may let you down. People may discriminate you against that kind of a attempt. Then political situation of a country. If there is political instability in a country, there is inflation, deflation, it's all affecting. That can actually create a lot of issues, because political instability can also create social security, physical security, national security. These kind of components you have to consider, the social, cultural and the environmental determinants. Then social and gender inequality. Gender inequality is a big contributor to mental health issues, especially in youth and adults, because they are exposed to that kind of discrimination in every arena of life. Conflict is not just ethnic conflict, but armed conflict war can have an effect on mental health. There are n number of studies shows that the mental health of people living within a war-prone zone or a conflict zone is very poor. Stigma, which we already discussed, and migration. We can see that a lot of migration happening, and in many of the cases, once you migrate, there is a difficulty in coping with the new situation, a new land, a new atmosphere, which trigger mental illness. How can we looked at the determinants of mental health? How can we counter this? Which we call, in an individual level, we call it resilience, where the person has the ability to adapt to the situation and evolve from any stressful situation. Some are born with it. We can say some people naturally does it. For those who cannot do it naturally, it's necessary to take help and create that or build that ability. Other thing is a strong support system. We need family, we need friends, we need colleagues, we need support groups. So through these we can actually prevent and promote mental health, prevent mental illness and promote mental health. Okay, we have talked about all these determinants and all. What are the mental health issues in youth and adults? Let us look at the factors that influence mental health in youth. Work is a factor that influences them. Ethnicity, which ethnic group you belong to. Transitions and life events. You migrated to some place, you took a new job. From the old job you came to a new job, you found it difficult to adjust. You got married, you have a child, your parents are coming and living with you, you lost a parent or you lost a loved ones. So this transitions and life events has an influence. Conflict and violence, which we already discussed. So these are the factors, general factors, which is considered as influencing mental health. But there are n number of minute factors which we have to consider as well. This impact can be positive as well as negative. Getting a good new job, a promotion can be positive. You have got your skills are accepted, you are being recognized for your work. But at the same time, it can be negative if you are not able to fulfill the expectations in the new job. So that's the way we have to think. For everything, marriage is a happy experience, but it can also be a negative experience if you are not able to keep up with the expectations. What are the factors creating mental health issues? The range of responsibilities in a person who is a youth and adult. As we said, 18 to 65, it's a long span and you have a range of responsibilities. You're not able to keep up with those responsibilities. You're not able to access to work. You have studied, you have education, you have everything, but you are not able to find a job which appreciate your skills, which appreciate your ability, can result in a mental health problem. Transitions in life, social political changes and conflict and violence, all these things are overlapping, but still these are the factors creating mental health issues, and this is one thing a social worker has to keep in mind while working with a youth and adult, because these things actually affect the productivity of the person. The concern here is we all have these issues. Some are, as I said, some are able to manage it, some are not able to manage it. Why is it a concern then for those who are not able to manage? Then they find solace in substance use, or some people take an extreme step of committing suicide. And it's here that mental health issues in youth and adult is a concern. Among the various mental health issues, there are many issues. We have discussed about depression, we have discussed about anxiety, we have discussed about severe mental disorders. But two mental disorders or mental health issues which are prominent and which are of concern is substance use disorder and suicide. Why substance use disorder? Because as we have seen, above 18, the 22.4% population are addicted to substance abuse, any type of substance abuse. What happens when you take a substance? Initially it is fine, it gives you the boost you require. Over a period of time, you lose the control over the substance, but the substance takes control over you. That means if you don't control it, if you don't do it in a manageable way, it will lead you to an impairment or a distress. That's how many of the people who use alcohol beyond uncontrollable alcohol abuse result in schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, because it triggered that mental health issue in you. It's not just that. People who use substance abuse beyond a point, especially drug abuse or alcohol abuse over the roof, we can say, or smoking, it affects their interpersonal one. Within the self there is a conflict. There is a conflict between your family and you, your loved ones and you, your friends and you. Then social function. People who are severely addicted to substance or severely using substance stop going to social functions. They become withdrawn to themselves and their substance. That's the only two things that exist. We have to have treatment for substance use disorder. Many of the time people doesn't realize the significance of treatment and social support system for people who are living with substance abuse or people who are suffering from substance abuse. Suicide. What is suicide? It's a defined as a deliberate self-harm with fatal outcome. Fatal in the sense you're dead, or people who are trying to do it is no more. But then there are attempted suicides which didn't fruitfully complete. In those cases, we need a strong social support system, counseling, and recently the government has, the law has recognized suicide or attempted suicide as a stressor, not as a mental illness per se. But however, the intervention need to be strong to build a support system for the people who are attempting suicide and people who may tend to attempt suicide. Why do people commit suicide, or why do people attempt suicide? A lot of life stresses. Psychiatric condition can be a reason. Psychosocial factor can be a reason. Family pressure can be a reason. Family conflict can be a reason. There are n number of reasons which have been presented as a reason for committing suicide or reason for attempted suicide. What we need is, we need a strong social support system. Promotion of mental health. Let us look at the promotion of mental health and prevention of mental disorders in youth and adults. When we talk about mental health promotion, we are talking about positive mental health. As we discussed the definition in the first module, that mental health is not just the absence of mental illness. We cannot define it like that. It is a process in which the person realizes their ability, act upon that ability and live fruitfully. In that case, mental health promotion is a positive mental health which aims to improve the mental health in the individual, family and the society. It is not just the individual. We have to look at that circle of individual, from the individual to family, family to the society. Improve mental health state in population by prevention, treatment and rehabilitation. Here also the three components: prevention, treatment and rehabilitation. We can see the primary, secondary and tertiary. These aspect has to be brought together. There is a definition by Hosman and Jane which is considered as a positive definition of promotion of mental health. Mental health promotion is the creation of individual, social and environmental conditions that enable optimal psychological and psychophysiological development. So it is a condition where the individual, social and the environmental factors come together and enable the optimal functioning of a person or development of a person, which help us to identify that it is not just the treatment, it is the prevention and the rehabilitation which gains significance. Prevention of mental disorder, reducing the incidence. So in mental disorder, when we talk about preventing mental disorder, we are talking about reducing the incidence. Prevalence, we have to check. Recurrence of mental disorders, the time spent with symptoms of the risk condition of mental illness. How long does the symptoms occur? How long does the symptom stays? What is the risk condition for a mental illness? Is a person in a position to harm self or harm others? Or is it too risky that the person cannot be left alone? So these kinds of incidences has to be reduced. Preventing or delaying recurrences. Relapse prevention we have talked about, and also decreasing the impact of illness in the affected person, their family and society. The impact of mental illness in the family and society, a lot of studies have been counted that studies have been proved that there is a huge impact on the family and the society because of mental illness, and the person per se, that though it's anyway clear that the person is affected by mental illness. So this effect has to be decreased through psychosocial rehabilitation and continuous proper treatment. We can say that this prevention can happen in three levels. One is universal prevention, where we focus an entire population or a general public, so mainly drafting policies. Second, selective prevention. One was universal, the term itself says universal, the population. Selective prevention, where you take one target individual or a group of population and then provide prevention techniques. Third is indicated prevention, where you monitor the higher risk population and provide services them to prevent into becoming a full-blown illness. Okay, let us look at the concept of risk and protective factors related to mental health in youth and adult. When we talk about risk and protective factors, we have to target those determinants that have a causal influences. We have to identify the causes and which are the causes that has an influence on or influence on the individual which can create an illness. Here we can use the word predisposing to the onset of mental disorder. Everybody has some predisposing factors in it, but in certain people it comes out that, so we have to identify what caused that illness, and then the risk factors are associated with the increased probability of onset. Once the person got sick or the person got mental illness, and once it is done, we took the treatment. Now what are the precipitating factors? What caused at this point of time, what caused it? What was the chances of relapse? What caused relapse? In short, what we have to think is, when we talk about mental illness, it's a process, or treatment and rehabilitation of mental illness is a process, and therefore we have to aim for long-term durations in mental health problems. What are the protective factors? Protective factors can be those conditions that improve people's resistance to risk factors and disorders. So there is a risk factor which we have talked about, the predisposing, the precipitating factor, and the person has a resilience. We have talked about the resilient factors. There are certain ability in the person to resist that kind of risk factors. Those conditions has to be improved. We have to focus on the factors that can modify, ameliorate or alter a person's response to some environmental hazard that predispose to a maladaptive outcome. So that means in the prevention we are looking at improving the conditions in the person to fight the illness and modifying the factors or modifying the response to some environmental conditions that causes the illness. Okay, let us summarize the issues in youth and or the mental health in youth and adult. We have seen that youth is a period that starts from 18 to 24, and later from 25 to 65 it is adulthood, or known as the adults, and again we can divide it into young adult and middle adult. However, from the 18 to 65 there are a range of mental health concerns due to the expectations from people who belongs to that age group. Since this age group is considered as the most productive age group, the expectations associated are also productive related or productive associated, such as complete education, attain employment, lead a happy family life, contribute to the society, achieve, if you have a job, go for higher achievements. So it never ends, and in a later period toward the middle adulthood your roles and responsibility changes, where you may have a loss of employment or you are preparing for the retirement. You have to take care of new family responsibilities such as grandchildren. You experienced a loss of some loved one, or this political conditions in which the country in which you are living has changed. So all these factors has an influence in the mental health of a youth or an adult. As a summary, I would suggest that more readings can be done in this area. Again, the socio-cultural components we have to be concerned about. Overall, we understand that a lot of focus is given on promotion of mental health, prevention of mental illness or mental disorder, and an integrated community-based approach towards achieving a better quality of life in youth and adult. Thank you.